Now, why don't we go ahead and head out to the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, where Lori Meggs is standing by with a live cut-in. Lori, we're at the start of a new expedition.
That is right. It's Expedition 37, but folks here in the Payload Operations Integration Center have been planning and preparing for this for months. Comes with any new expedition. Joining me now is the Payload Operations Manager for Expedition 37, Becky Grimaldi. Becky, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for wearing pink. We match. We did not plan that. Tell us, first of all, what a Payload Operations Manager does.
Well, we're pretty much, we work a whole 6 months worth, 2 increments actually I'm assigned to, and we're pretty much making sure that POIC is ready for all of the NASA science experiments that we have coming up in the next 6 months. And we do that through a lot of coordination with our counterparts in Europe and Japan and Houston. So it's a lot of meetings and telecons and coordinating. But we make sure our readiness is ready to go so that we have everything ready in place before it gets to this room.
That's right. It's all the behind the scenes pretty stuff, right? But it's not a one-woman show. I know that you guys work for a really long time. There's planners, there's preppers. Tell us all about that.
Absolutely. There's an assistant that I have, Stephanie Dudley, who helps me immensely. And then, yes, there are several phases that we go through to get things ready for ops. Pretty much the last phase before we're in this room executing is the people that are behind this room. There's about 4 or 5 rooms back there filled by about 20 different personnel that usually rotate in on a 6-month basis. They work Monday through Friday, 8 by 5, and they are back there getting things ready for this room to execute. The first one of those teams is the planning team. They start building all the plans that the crew and the ground team need to execute, and they start building those about 3 weeks out from when we're getting ready to execute. They're filling in all the information that the crew needs to do their job and command windows that we need. If a PD is at a remote site and they need to command, they're putting all that on the plan so we have it all ready to go.
So it's kind of all on their shoulders of what happens, what the crew does.
Absolutely, and it's a lot of coordination. They work with the international partners 3 times a week to make sure that everything is coordinated and that the resources that we need, do we have enough video lines, all that kind of stuff is coordinated so everything fits.
So they work on a timeline?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. And then after that, there's a team we call the prep team, and they're getting all of the products ready to make sure that everything is on board and ready to go for the ops. They start reviewing the timeline about a week out. They're also processing all of our change traffic if we need to update a crew procedure or any other products that need to be uplinked to support the ops. Sometimes PDs have files, data files that need to go up to support a run, scripts, that kind of thing. They're processing the paperwork, making sure those products are on board in time, and reviewing the timeline, making sure everything's complete so that they can hand over a complete product to this room and it's ready to execute.
But they really have to be on their toes, right?
Oh, absolutely. The prep team is staffed by all the increment leads of the same positions that you see in the room here, and they have been working the increment at least 6 months beforehand, before they get here, doing reviews and making sure they understand, especially for new things that we haven't done before, making sure we understand everything about it, any constraints, things that can't operate together. We need to know all that so that we can lay everything out and have everything good to go. So this room cannot operate without those 2 rooms back there. There's also folks that are uplinking our crew procedures for us, PODF support. We have a payload systems engineer that is reviewing anomalies to make sure that we can get things back up and running when we need to. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes before this room is ready to go.
And here I thought it was all just you.
I wish.
Let's talk about some of the exciting new research that's coming up. You've got a SpaceX launch, an orbital launch. Tell us what we're going to see in this expedition.
Absolutely. The orbital launch, this will be the first increment that has an orbital launch, a new vehicle that can take science to the space station. That's very exciting. We're going to have 2 launches in increment 37 and increment 38 to watch out for. A couple of the new payloads, we have some satellite operations, and on the second orbital launch, there's going to be a payload called Slosh go up that is going to use the Spheres satellites that we've used before, and it's going to study fluid sloshing in like engine tanks. And it's going to take 2 satellites and hook the fluid piece of hardware in between them, and then the satellites can fly around, and it's going to videotape how the fluid moves it's a clear vessel that they can watch, and they're going to compare that to their computer models that they've generated on the ground to see how close those computer models are.
So it is really works. Sloshing.
It is really sloshing.
That won't be fun for the crew at all.
Oh, of course. That'll
be
a fun one. And then, speaking of satellites, we're also going to do some satellites outside. If you didn't know, the Japanese module has an airlock, and they have the capability to send some small satellites outside that we can actually deploy out into space. The orbital flight will have a couple dozen small satellites go up on it that are going to be deployed using a new hardware by the NanoRacks team. And the satellites can be as small as a 10-centimeter cube or multiples of that. The crew will load the satellites on a table in the GEM airlock, and then it goes outside, and then the GEM arm picks that up, points it down towards the ground, and then they kind of deploy out at the particular time that they need to go. So that's going to be very interesting, and that NanoRacks hardware is new for us, and that's certainly a new, exciting thing that we get to do, and it's always neat to watch the external stuff go on.
And I understand that the crew is going to become some farmers, right?
Yes, and on the SpaceX flight, there's going to be a payload called Veggie, and it is an expandable habitat that goes inside an express rack. It takes up 2 lockers, and it has media and lights, and it will let them grow vegetables. And I think the lettuce may be one of the first ones that they grow this time.
Now, will they eat that, or is it just they grow it, they bring it back and have to study it first?
I think that's the end result is for them to eat it.
Okay.
The seeds go up. They actually will plant and water them up there, and then the veggie hardware is kind of expandable, so it has a bellows, and they can make it bigger as the plants grow. It'll give them light and circulate air, and then the crew will have to water them periodically. So that's certainly something for the future. We need to have vegetables for the crew to eat, so it's something interesting to do.
Much different than growing them down here on Earth, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
But maybe they'll be good gardeners by then. Also, let's lastly talk about, you're also on Expedition 38, so as you just talked about, all that planning's going on right now.
Oh, yes, and we're looking for things, all the launch manifests and changes for what's going to fly to get ready. We have to do reviews months in advance for products and things, so yeah, we're already preparing for that orbital flight and the SpaceX flight that's in January. We're already preparing for those now.
So day 1 of Expedition 37, you guys are really busy back here. Cliff Jones back there at the helm today as the Payload Operations Director. Thank you so much, Becky, for filling us in.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
We look forward to it.